So Taekwondo is not a good style of fighting. Taekwondo is 70% bullshido, 30%. So I use the term bullshido, and what this refers to is bullshit, like bullshit, bullshito, right? Because Bushido is the way of the warrior, Bullshido is the way of bullshit, right? And there's an awful lot of that. So Taekwondo is about 70% Bullshido, 30% Budo, meaning it's about 30% functional. Karate, about 60% Bullshido, 40% Budo. Jiu-Jitsu is 100% Budo. Muay Thai, 100% Budo. Boxing, 100% Budo. Kickboxing, 100% Budo. Krav Maga, 100% Budo. So in other words, there's some that are just pure real fight, and then there's some that have some real things to offer, but a lot of bullshit involved. And then there's a bunch that are just pure bullshit, like Qigong or Aikido or Dim Mak or Gong Fu or, all this other shit. So basically, what you need to do is break fighting down and understand that mixed martial arts is a complete combat system. So every fight starts on your feet. Okay. So when you're doing jujitsu, you start on your knees, you start on the ground. That doesn't happen in real life. You start on your feet. So every fight, you need to think about, I am facing my opponent. Assuming you only have one opponent, you could have two opponents, you could have three opponents, right? But assuming you only have one, you are on your feet and he is on his feet. So you can engage him with striking, or you can engage him with grappling, and you can defeat him through striking, or you can defeat him through grappling. And if you defeat him through grappling, you're defeating him through submissions. And submissions include chokes, and submissions include, submissions like arm bars, kimuras, omoplatas, heel hooks, knee bars, leg locks, ankle picks. So you're either going to bend the guy's skeleton like a pretzel till his bones break, or you're going to cut off the blood flow to his brain till he dies, or you're going to hit him so hard in the head that you create a brain whiplash where his brain is going to bounce inside his skull, and then his brain is going to swell up inside the limited space of his cranium, and he's going to die. And you can usually do that by a single takedown. If you slam a guy down with a judo throw, I don't know what the fuck they're doing outside my building, you'll break his skull and his brain will bounce.
Wow. Do you want to talk about, you said you fought a champion, a provincial champion or a national champion. Do you want to talk about some of your more professional fights?
My fights?
Yeah, in competition?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have much to brag about in this regard. However, I have won gold, silver, and bronze in both judo and jiu-jitsu at the provincial and interprovincial level. So when I was in judo, again, my coach was a woman named Shireen Razak, and Shireen Razak was an Egyptian, ethnically Egyptian Canadian Olympian. So she was an Egyptian judoka who was competing for Canada in the Olympics, and she had won medals. I think she won bronze or silver, but again, Olympic medalist. So real fucking warrior. And she was hated. Like all the other coaches hated her because Egyptian judo is so different from Japanese judo. It's like polar opposites. So I'm an Egyptian judoka, right? Because I learned it from Shireen Razak and her husband Basil. But Basil was chill as fuck. But anyways, they hated Shireen because she would scream and she would yell and she was crazy because she was fiery, right? And that was the way that she taught me to fight too. What was I talking about?
I just asked you to go over some of the crazier fights that you went through in competition.
Okay, yeah. So I didn't want to compete. I just was like, I just want to, get in shape or like learn some shit or whatever. Like, I don't want to compete. And she's like, well, we're a competition gym. And if you're not going to compete, we don't want you. You're not welcome here. So she literally told me, she's like, if you're not going to compete and be part of the University of Winnipeg competition team, you can't be here. Like, she was like, you can't be a casual. It's not an option. There's no casuals allowed, right? So then I had to compete in Kenora and other neighboring provinces. I don't know what the fuck they're doing inside. But anyways, I went to a competition in Kenora, and in that, I was only a yellow belt, and I was probably weighing about 170, 180 at the most. And yellow belt is like the lowest belt. It goes white, yellow, green. So this would have been very early in my career. But the thing is, when they have a competition, if there isn't enough people to fill out your division, they'll combine divisions, right? So even though I was only a yellow belt, they said, well, there's nobody else in your category, so we're going to put you up against brown belts and black belts. And so they literally put me as a 180 or 170 yellow belt against brown belts and black belts. And in that tournament, I actually beat a brown belt and a black belt. The black belt was actually from my own gym. I choked him out. I got him from behind, and I choked him out. He tapped out. I had him from like a top position choke, and I lapel choked him. He tapped out in front of his son, which was awkward. And then I fought this brown belt, and he ran off the mat in the middle of the fight and puked in the garbage can. And because he ran off the mat, I automatically won. So because he puked, I won. So I don't know if he had a flu or if he was just out of condition. But in that fight, I was a yellow belt, and in that day, I beat a black belt and a brown belt in that one day, which was pretty cool. And I fought the national champion. And as I told you, I made it like 2 rounds with him, and then he went like, oosh, and then he fucking threw me, and I lost. But I basically, as a yellow belt, I beat a black belt, I beat a brown belt, and I went 2 rounds with a national champ. And that was one of my like first ever tournaments. True story.
Wow. So, in your blurb for this podcast, you said you had some takeaways for people who weren't really fighters that you learned from fighting. What would those philosophies be?
Well, right. And again, I don't know. I'm sorry. There's someone like just pounding outside my
Yeah, I can kind of hear it.
That's ridiculous. But the point is, martial arts are a form of self-defense, but they are both more and less than that. So martial arts are a system of personal development, your discipline, your willpower, your integrity, your honor. And there's a whole system that we've laid out: courage, willpower, discipline, honor, integrity, honesty, loyalty, benevolence. This is what we call, Bushido. Self-defense is not only combat, because by the time you've come to combat, you've already failed to avoid violence, and you probably had many chances to avoid violence. So don't think that the way to avoid violence or to triumph is to fight and win. You should always be trying to avoid fighting. However, the ultimate way to avoid fighting is to be known as the superior fighter. Because if people know that fighting you is guaranteed to end in defeat, they will not wish to fight you. Therefore, you will have the option of peaceful diplomacy. If you're a weak target, nobody wants your peaceful diplomacy. So if you want to even have the option of peaceful diplomacy, everyone should know that you could kill all of them. That way, they will gladly accept whatever nonviolent offer you give them, because they know that your violent offer will be worse for them. So this is translated as walk softly and carry a big stick. Be polite and carry a loaded gun. Be nice and be ready to kill. And, when you do strike, Sun Tzu said, let your plans be dark and impenetrable. And when you fall like a thunderbolt. So don't let anybody really understand you, but let them know that when you do decide to act, your actions are decisive and fatal. Because only thereby can you guarantee any kind of peace.